Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to another Reltio Community Show. I'm Chris Detzel, and I am the Director of our Customer Community and Engagement here at Reltio. We have John Aloy. He's a Principal Product Manager here at Reltio, and he'll be talking today about our Snowflake Connector and the upgrades and things like that. So really excited about that from our new release. And John, this just came out yesterday, right? Like officially, is that right?
Yeah, it's hot off the press, Chris. That's right. Yesterday was the release of the Snowflake Connector.
Awesome. So we're here to talk a little bit about that. So the rules of the show today is just keep yourself on mute. All questions should either be asked on chat or feel free to take yourself off mute and ask those questions. The call's going to be recorded and being recorded as we speak. And I should have that out by the end of this week or early next week. Take the survey at the end of the call. The Zoom pop-up will show up. It's only 3 questions. We always want your feedback. And as a matter of fact, because of your feedback, we have added a show or 2. So we have some shows coming up. Today's show is the Reltio Snowflake Connector. And then John will be back with us next week on the Reltio Google BigQuery Connector. That also came out yesterday. And then we'll have an Ask Me Anything to continue the show that we had on how to search my data with the Reltio APIs. There were so many questions that we're going to answer some of those questions on an Ask Me Anything, but we want to take additional questions on there as well. And then on the 15th, we're looking at understanding Reltio API performance and what that means. And then this was a suggestion from one of our community members to say, hey, look, we need to know more about crosswalks. What are they? How do you use them? So we'll be going deep into the ABCs of crosswalks, understanding their purpose and their use. So I'm going to stop sharing once I find the stop sharing button right there. And John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. There was a comment on my audio. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay.
It sounds great. Yeah.
Great. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
I love the background, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I love Chicago. I need to make it back there. It's been a while. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, sure can.
Already jumping into Snowflake here. So let me start with some slides first to give you some context on the connector itself. Oops, share screen. And we'll jump into a demo. So what I wanted to do today is kind of go over, what this product does, who it's for, what problems we're trying to solve, what are some use cases that we can help identify within the Reltio community here. I want this to be kind of an open session here. So as I go through this, feel free to put some questions in chat. Feel free to interrupt, ask some questions. I want to make this kind of a two-way street.
Awesome.
The whole intent here is to get you guys familiar with the new connector that was just launched yesterday, and then we have some time for a demo. So I'd like to show you kind of what benefits and features we're actually showing in near real time, and get your feedback on that.
Some folks are saying they're having some problems with the mic. I can hear you just fine. So I don't know, Gino, are you able to hear him? Okay, just want to make sure.
So just to compare and contrast, Chris, you sound like you're standing right next to me. John sounds far away, like he's in an echo chamber.
Okay. I don't know if there's something else you can do, John, just to kind of, I don't know. I feel like he's.
But I don't think it's terrible. I think it's adequate.
Okay. Let's keep going.
Yeah, no problem. I try to move a little bit closer to the mic here. Hopefully that helps a bit.
Oh, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, so here I have on the slide, 3 major challenges, that we see with data and the industries that we're in here today. The first thing is that it's really hard to get that single source of truth. So this is kind of the Reltio bread and butter aspect of identifying, cleansing, deduplicating, enriching data, and being able to trust that data and making sure that it's actually accurate. Data is coming in from all different sources, and it's really hard for companies these days to organize that, get that single version of truth, to be able to tell a story about how that data impacts, whatever business initiative you're working on. And then the second thing is that when we talk about data and the influx of data, it's it's a lot, and it's going to continue to grow and grow. And as data continues to be consumed at exponential levels, customers are trying to understand it's actually what's going on with their products, and businesses are trying to be able to communicate that. And the big thing is getting that feedback from the customers on their products, and being able to organize this data and stay up to date, especially in a digital economy. We're talking about e-commerce transactions. It's important to be able to get the latest and greatest data to be able to accurately reflect what the customer is experiencing in that digital ecosystem, in that digital experience at that point in time. It's critical nowadays than it was, 10 or 20 years ago. So the speed of data is absolutely important. And then the third thing is that there's a lot of integrations that are going on, especially when we think about large organizations that are trying to have a data strategy, trying to do data analytics. Lots of decisions need to be made in terms of where it's stored. And if it's decided to be stored in a centralized warehouse, there's lots of data that needs to be integrated with your first-party data, third-party data integrations, CDPs, MDM platforms, all sorts of different integrations that are hitting this warehouse, and they're constant. And there's lots of vendors in this space right now. And it's sometimes overwhelming for customers to be able to manage that and to be able to understand exactly what do I need to do, what's your product, what are you going to offer me, right? And when you talk about time to value and being able to get set up from 0 to 1 very quickly, that becomes more and more important for customers these days. So the vision that we have with this connector is to essentially be able to take the bread and butter of Reltio in terms of cleansing, deduplicating, enriching data, and be able to get that into a customer's Snowflake instance very rapidly, very persistently, and being able to expose the key data types that Reltio provides to customers today. Either do analytics on Reltio to ensure that you're getting the best value from Reltio and being able to understand, for example, the best match rules that are being applied in production, or to be able to take this single source of truth that Reltio is giving you and pass it downstream to other applications or business users for their own data science models, for their own analyst reports, what have you. And to be able to get that into Snowflake persistently and rapidly and uncovering all the key data types is kind of the goal of what we're trying to do with this connector. And so this slide is really, there's a lot going on in the slide, though. What I wanted to kind of cover here is exactly kind of a more tactical view about how the Snowflake connector works. So when you think about the Reltio platform, there's lots of integration points in terms of how you can load your data. You can use the data loader, a bunch of REST APIs to be able to get data from legacy systems, from third-party connectors, from other enterprise applications, whatever have you, right? Reltio does its magic, cleans that data up, deduplicates it, enriches it, and then it gets exported out to Snowflake. The key difference here that we're trying to communicate with this new connector is that as events are occurring in Reltio, we're listening to those events and capturing those changes in near real time. And so whatever you would see in your Snowflake warehouse would be representative of what you see in the Reltio UI when it comes to an event change. I'll go into more specifics as I talk about the architecture, but I think that's a really powerful thing that I want to kind of say out here, because when we think about getting value from that data, it's becoming, the fastest data that you can actually consume. But then we also have different integration points to be able to visualize that data and to be able to understand exactly what you're working with and what's actually most important. And I have here kind of a screenshot here of the recent Snowsight integration that we did within the Snowflake connector. So what this product does is not only integrates into your warehouse and we manage that schema out of the box for you to be able to work with the Reltio data in near real time, but we also kind of take it a step further, demonstrate some applications in our native BI tool, which is called Snowsight, to be able to understand exactly what's going on with Reltio data. So there's an example of a match KPI report. You can be able to understand how many entities with no merges exist, how many potential matches exist, what are the match rules for those potential matches, right? And then, from a merge perspective, was it an auto merge? Was it a manual merge? So being able to represent this in reporting formats is something that we document and we kind of showcase as part of the product. And we think that it's extremely important. When we talk about key Reltio data types, we're talking about entities, relations, interactions, matches, and merges. This is what we came out with with the GA release yesterday. And this is kind of representative of the key data types that our customers at Reltio are interested in today. And when we talk about near real-time applications, Chris, we can spend probably another community session on just going over the different use cases of near real-time, right? But there's aspects from a healthcare life sciences perspective, from when you're talking about a medical device that's helping manage somebody's insulin levels, and they fluctuate over daily, right? There's lots of spikes. A customer needs to know that, and that's near real-time information that's needed. When we talk about financial services and a trading desk and being able to process transactions and get a timestamp on that for auditing purposes, or maybe know your customer or anti-money laundering kind of concerns about validating a new account. When you're in these experiences and you're trying to get validation that that account was open, there's lots of back-end processes that need to happen from a financial services organization to be able to go ahead and say yes or no. And in this economy, when everybody's expecting things to be done very quickly, that's now becoming an expectation that happens in real time, and I'm going to prove my account that I just opened, right? And so there's lots of different use cases out there, especially from insurance, right? Think about insurance and getting a quote on a claim. So being able to understand that you're shopping for insurance and be able to get that quote in real time after you enter this information is very important. But there's lots of risks that need to be measured by the insurance company, lots of business rules that need to be evaluated from an underwriting perspective. How do we go ahead and communicate to the customer that we can proceed on this journey, giving them that validation, but at the same time protecting that business? And this is a near real-time expectation that's becoming more and more common. One other use case I'll talk about, and then I'll get on, I promise. But I'm just so fascinated with the near real-time component and what this connector can kind of do, right? So when you think about logistics automation, when you think about warehouses that are out there these days, I walked in a warehouse about 20 years ago, and this is in Ecuador, and my uncle was helping manufacturing our warehouse, and part of my job a couple of years ago was to do some software automation on robotics in warehouses. And I got a chance to walk into a warehouse, about 3 years ago, and I barely saw any people. Everything is being done by robots these days. So when you think about getting a pallet off a crate and transferring a parcel to a chute, passing a parcel down a conveyor belt and putting it into another conveyor belt, there are robots that are essentially doing these things now. And when you think about the demand for e-commerce and package delivery, Prime Day, holidays, right? These facilities are all powered by robotics, and they're pumping 30 to 60,000 packages a day, and that could be even more in real time. So the cost of one package actually slipping up in a robot, maybe missing the idea of the package, not understanding how to work, and the software is not smart enough to do so, stops that routine, that flow for 30 minutes. That costs the company roughly around $5,000, because you are essentially preventing multiple packages from getting through, getting delayed, and then risk of refund, and then not to mention the overhead of shipping, right? So when you think about near real-time importance of data and having that robot understand and being able to adapt to the different variations of packages that are coming in, and being able to share that knowledge to other robots in another facility that's on the same line, the same make and model of that manufacturer, in near real time to prevent that $5,000 mistake, and could be more, right? That's extremely important. So when we think about near real time and being able to promote data, right, into the warehouse, the Snowflake warehouse of the customer, and that's the central analytics repository to be able to harness that energy and give that data to the people that can make these decisions is extremely important. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Snowflake architecture here. So on the left side, when we see a separation of the Reltio environment and the customer environment. So we have the MDM platform service, and this is where our customer tenants are located, and lots of activity going on in these tenants. There's a entity created, there's a new data source loaded, there's a relation that's been deleted, match and merge events going on all the time. And what this connector is doing is it's listening to these activities. So every single event that occurs within the customer's tenant, we're able to track that. and we feed that into a microservice. This is the Snowflake Connector to essentially transform those events into compatible tables and views for Snowflake. And it's packaged in compressed JSON. And so what we do from there is we send that into an intermediate step, which is a cloud storage bucket for a customer. So what you see on the screen here is saying, an S3 bucket, and that's for AWS customers. But I want to be very clear about, especially with the release that happened yesterday, is that this is not only for AWS cloud users with Snowflake environment in there, it's also for Azure and GCP. So you can go ahead for Azure customers, you can go ahead and replace that S3 bucket with a blob storage. And then, for GCP, you can replace that bucket with a GCS bucket, right? And so what we're doing here is we're making this very compatible to all sorts of the major cloud providers to be able to provide this event flow. And so just for this example here, we have a cloud storage bucket, and we pass that compressed JSON to that bucket. And so we have documentation for a customer to set up a queue and to set up a Snowpipe to essentially listen to these events that are landing in this cloud storage and passing it to their Snowflake in near real time. And so that Snowpipe element facilitates that near real time transformation into a variety of data tables that we provide out of the box, right? And so that's essentially what's happening here. So we're converting all these events into easily digestible data tables for our customers to query in near real time. And just wanted to touch on kind of permissions and security aspects of this. So, all we need to essentially get this data into your cloud storage bucket is this one single, write permission into that bucket, right? From there, when you see that dividing line of the customer environment, that is all internal communication from your own cloud storage bucket to your own Snowflake. So there's no, vendor concerns about directly, inserting things into your Snowflake, right? We have a very relaxed policy to go ahead and just write that permission into your cloud storage bucket. And this has been widely adopted by several customers with little friction in terms of IT organization pushback. And that's one of the things that we designed it this way so that we can, comply with any sort of IT policy that, may make this a little bit difficult, but this is something that, was purposely designed to make this a lot more seamless and a lot more aligned to each company's IT policy, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm gonna pause here. Any questions so far, Chris, or are we good to keep on moving?
Yeah, at the moment, I think we're good.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go into this a little bit in the demo. We're actually going to see some live data, but I wanted to just to kind of present the schema. So I mentioned some data tables, right, from a Snowflake perspective. We have a landing table. This is where all the information is first put into the customer Snowflake environment. And it's going to include all sorts of the entity, relation, interaction, match, and merge events. And everything is kind of, this is the starting point, right? We're going to be able to identify, if it's an entity type, that's an organization, a contact. And then more importantly, when was the event? When did the event occur? What was the timestamp? And who did that event, right? And then a variety of JSON arrays, right, for attributes and crosswalks to that specific entity, for example. And so everything here this is the start of kind of where the data seeps in. And as part of the product, right, we have a variety of staging tables. These say views, we offer views too, but we recommend tables, and we provide essentially scripts for this, right, to organize the data into these key data types. So we have entities, relations, interactions, matches, and merges tables. And within the entity table, for example, you are able to see the attributes crosswalks, associated to that entity, right? And that's key. And you're still representing that event created time, that event updated time. And more importantly, when you'll see in this demo is that we look to represent the latest object version for querying purposes. So that landing table has that kind of historical version management of, maybe there was a bunch of changes to a specific entity, and that's all tracked there. But what we're trying to do with this table is represent the latest version of that entity, right? For the latest, most, relevant or accurate kind of aspect of that event for querying purposes, right? So it's going into this near real-time fashion. that we're also representing the latest object version for analysis and insights.
Hey, John.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a few questions now. So can we define the response time for near real time? I'm interested to know if the interface to Snowflake can be plugged into a UI.
Yeah, so essentially what we guarantee is 400 objects per second. So that's roughly 1.5 million records an hour. That's essentially processed into Snowflake, right? So you think about that. I mean, near real time could happen in a couple of minutes, if that helps kind of explain that.
Yeah, I love the stats, man. Is it bidirectional connector? So can data flow from Snowflake to Reltio?
No, that's a really great question. So the release that happened yesterday is starting out with a one direction of the export fashion, right? But on our roadmap, we're hoping to make this bidirectional feed so that we can import and export, from Snowflake directly. There are aspects of kind of bidirectional aspects. So from the analytics attributes perspective, right? This is something that's usually powered by the customer. So let's say a customer would want to create maybe a target score for an entity, like it's a contact. So part of my demo today is going to be kind of a B2B lead score case, right? So for people that are looking at prospects to engage in the B2B sales, right, you have certain information about a prospect, right? But there's also maybe a score or likelihood that they would convert, right, for your product. You can essentially put in an analytics attribute here, that score, calculate that, pass it back into Reltio, and then on your next export, you'd be able to see that analytics attribute lead score being populated in that fashion. So that's something that's available today. But when we talk about full scale like import and export, from Snowflake specifically, that's on the roadmap later. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, just two more quick questions and we'll move on. But so Snowflake schema has to match Reltio data structure, is that right? And say, like L3 data model for pharma?
Yeah, right. So the schema structure should match one-to-one to Reltio. So it's JSON kind of structure. And so that's the way the out-of-the-box schema kind of works, right? And so we designed it to be flexible so that it is one-to-one to Reltio. And this helps for like validation and verification of counts, right? Understanding exactly mapping, that you got the right data from Reltio. And that's the way that it's designed. But it's flexible. If you, once it gets into the data table, you can kind of manage to whatever schema that you want from there.
Okay. And then they keep coming in, but I'm going to ask in a minute because I think we should move on. But one other question that was directly to me, was yesterday's release the first Snowflake connector release, or was it more of an enhancement?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This is a new separate product. We do have a legacy Snowflake connector out, but that is a product that is being deprecated, and we sent out some notification on that to our existing legacy customers. This is a new product because it essentially has a different underlying architecture on how it works. So instead of so the way to think about it is that we had a legacy product out there. It was more of a pool. So customers had to essentially use an API to call into Reltio manually, or maybe they could schedule some incremental batch jobs or what have you. But there needed to be a pool from Reltio to go ahead and do that. This is essentially constantly pushing the data so that the customer doesn't have to worry about stuff like that, right? So this is technically a new product.
Great. I have a couple more questions, but let's keep going, and then I'll ask those here shortly.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, so again, as let's talk about the relation table here, the main difference that we'll see is that there's a start and end object here, so you're understanding the lineage of the relationship, where it started, where it ended. That's the key thing you want to remember about that table. From an interaction perspective, we have members of the interaction, right? So if there's an entity that made a payment to another organization, another entity, right, that would be kind of captured here as members to be able to track that interaction. And then from a match perspective, we have here potential matches, not matches, manual matches, and then a version and a timestamp. So when we think about potential matches, being able to export that full set of matches is definitely a use case that we're trying to solve for. I believe in the Reltio platform, you can be able to understand potential matches as kind of like a small subset, but you'd be able to get all the potential matches here, right, and be able to kind of classify them and then do some troubleshooting. If you wanted to maybe go to production and you're in the test environment, you're trying to kind of play to see if these potential matches are actually true. Are they working with your match rules and be able to tune that way? That's a really popular use case for this table. From a merge perspective, this is understanding what already happened. So that validation of here are the match rules I applied. Here's a winner and loser. Here's a merge tree kind of information. Here's the match rule associated to that, and here's the timestamp that occurred. Right. So this is just about optimization of Reltio performance here with these two tables. Okay. I talk about the features and benefits, and I'll kind of just maybe end it here and then go into that demo because I know we're running a little low on time. But when we talk about out of the box, right, Reltio-managed pipeline, as soon as this is configured and set up, after the initial data load, the customer doesn't need to touch it, right? This is managed by Reltio. So if you perhaps make a schema change, right, you add a new attribute into your data model in Reltio, right, that's automatically picked up. Right, so there's really not a lot of user actions to be taken here, as this is more of a consistent, persistent pushing of the data rather than a pull, right? And so that's something I definitely want to highlight here. In terms of data types supported, right, we're starting with these 5 data types that we discussed, but on the roadmap here, we're going to add more and more data types like activity, log, history, workflow, things of that nature to really get that 360 view. But we have these key data types that are started right now with the release that just happened yesterday. I think I talked about near real time quite a lot, so I think I'll let that feature speak for itself. But yeah, we also touched upon the fact that this is compatible with Google Snowflake and AWS Snowflake and Azure Snowflake, right? And the fact that we definitely put security first, so we work very closely with our Snowflake partners here and Snowflake engineers to understand exactly how to make this, as cost efficient as possible, right? When we're streaming a bunch of data, you're going to get a lot of updates, right? So it's all about, setting time to live policies on your storage buckets that we provide some recommendations for. It's all about using, some features within Snowflake, with time travel, archival processes, right? To be able to kind of manage that data flow. And this is kind of also why we present the latest object version, right? Because you only want to understand what the latest change is, right? And you have a historical table to look at that kind of stuff, but for now, we want to keep it, lean in terms of, respecting your cost elements of, producing this and putting this in your Snowflake, right? So that's something I definitely want to cover that. So, Chris, I don't know if you want to pause for a couple more questions and then we can go into the demo if that works.
Yeah, that works for me. So let me get to that question. Do we provide an out-of-the-box report or reporting templates?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Snowsight integration earlier, right? It's a BI, local BI native tool for Snowflake. Sorry, were you saying something, Chris?
No. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. So so we do have a connection to that, and so what we do is we have a documented reporting template that essentially shows how to make a basic match KPI report, right? So, understanding, those potential matches, the match rules associated to that, and then drills down to the entity ID, right? So, if you were to, add a new potential match in the Snowflake, it would essentially show up in that report, right? And so the whole goal is that we're providing a template for customers to visualize that data, to understand, okay, this is what it is for this specific use case of understanding, match rules and optimizing that, right? But the goal is to provide it as a template so that you can use that template for other use cases that you may have, right? And that's what we're providing with the connector today.
Great. Is the linked flag in the event indicating merge or relationship, or maybe something else?
Yeah, linked is connecting 2 events together, and that's used to essentially help with the processing of maybe the relation table, right? So if it's a linked event to another linked event, how do we get the start and end object, to be, put in that relation table? That's predominantly used as a flag to help organize those scripts that we provide down the line. If that makes sense.
Great. And I don't know if you know this answer, but is Redshift connector an opportunity in the future for Reltio? Do you know?
That's definitely on our roadmap. So I appreciate that. So our goal is we started with the 2 most popular connectors. So when you think about dropping data into analytics warehouses that our customers are using today, Google, Snowflake, Databricks, Delta Lake, those are all connectors that are extremely popular. But we're aware that Redshift is out there. We're aware that Azure Synapse Analytics is out there too, right? So these are things on our roadmap that we're definitely targeting. And so, yeah, if there's an opportunity for that person that wanted to discuss more with me on that, I'm happy to schedule something separately. But no,
Great. Two more questions, and then we can go to the demo because I know people are excited about that. Is this an extra add-on, or do we need to add on our org subscription? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is an additional subscription. So this is something that I would recommend to talk to your AEs about if you're interested in the demo and in this connector. Yeah, it would require an additional subscription.
So two people asked me that question. So boom, perfect. And then can we include audit logs part of the data loading to Snowflake?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I mentioned that we're launching our connector. We launched our connector yesterday, and we're starting with some key data types. One of the data types on our roadmap in the future is audit data, right? So for audit logs, that is planned for a future release.
Great. Let's keep going, and we'll keep piling in these questions, and then I'll start asking them here shortly again.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so you guys, I assume you guys can still see my screen?
We can.
Awesome. So I have here a connected Snowflake instance here with our connector here. And I have a variety of queries to kind of show you a little bit more about that schema that we're talking about with the data table. And let me just go ahead and start running this so it'll give you a sense of kind of what schema we're working with here. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you guys have started using the new Snowflake UI, but I converted about a month ago, and it's really good. It's really snazzy. So if you guys are considering doing that, I was a console UI person for a while, but this is super helpful to be able to understand kind of JSON comparisons across. It keeps on the same line, which is great. And the only UI, Chris, I can think of that's close to this is a new Reltio UI. So the shameless plug for new Reltio UI.
Well, shameless or not, people are having to use it. You know what I mean? So that's exciting. Everybody's changing their UI for better experience.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. So we have this data table right here, and we have a URI, and I mentioned this version time, right? So this is going to be tracking all the versions of events that are associated with a particular object, whether that's an entity, relation, interaction, match or merge, right? And I'll show you through the demo how this is kind of facilitated through an event chain that we'll create in the Reltio UI today. But this is an important feature to be able to represent that latest object version, right? And then we have this associated timestamp of when this event occurred. And then we talked about this deleted linked aspect. So we want to identify if the entity was deleted, right? And we're going to go ahead and put that here. We want to identify if there is two entities that have a relation, right? And we throw that here. And within the object type, what is this, an entity, relation, interaction, and merge? And then the type within the type, within an entity, individual, organization, contact, think about that. And then we have all the packaged JSON in terms of analytics attributes, crosswalks, things of that nature that are packaged here at the start of this landing table, right? So I just want to be clear that this is a table that's used to facilitate the main tables that you would use to query against. So this is the entity view here. And so here, we have the version, right? Is going to be the latest version of this particular entity, the type of that entity, and then we have the JSON within attributes and crosswalks here. That analytics attribute, so that write back functionality that's optional for customers to pursue. They're going to use this, right? That is possible and available. Who was created by, when it was created, updated by, and then updated time, and then if it's active, right? So we want to again measure. If these things, based on like deletion events or inactivity, right? If they're active, we want to be able to have a flag to classify this for analysis for analytics purposes here. And so go down just very quickly to relations. same kind of structure as entities, and then we have the start and end object here, right? So understanding kind of where this started from an object URI perspective in the crosswalks, right? And then where it ended is kind of important, right? And that's what we're trying to show here from a relation perspective. Interactions, again, the member function here is this is the difference in the table, right? So who are the associated members in a particular interaction, and this is something that Reltio helps track and helps you understand it. And then again, yeah, active matches, right? Important to kind of represent that, right? In terms of what's relevant today, instead of having information on a deleted entity and matches for that entity was deleted, right? So we want to maybe focus on active, which is true. And then we have this potential match. So we have the entity ID, and then we have this potential match that's associated with that entity ID. And then we have the match score as well. And then the match rules as well, if there are any, right? And that's going to be classified in this column. And then if it's not a match like this one is, right, we want to call that one out. And if it was a manual match, not based on any kind of match rules that was done maybe by a data steward, we're also calling that out here. And then the effective timestamp, and then active, which is true. And then the last thing, from a data schema perspective, is showing the merge key, right? And then what actually happened based on those match rules: the winner ID, the loser ID, the timestamp, the match rules, and the URIs associated with that. Here we see there's an automatic match by a DUNS number, right? That's mentioned here for analytics purposes, right? And then if it's an auto match, based on a rule, right, that's scheduled, or if it's a manual match, and then again if it's active. And so hopefully this gives you kind of a preview of the data schema and just with real data to be able to kind of understand that. But I think some things I also want to call out is that a lot of customers have asked, okay, so how do I break out some of these things, right? How do I work with this data that you give me? I want to go further. I want to dig deep further, right? And so, based on our documentation that we released, we have that ability to do that. And so this is just showing an entity. So I mentioned that we have entities by types and depends on the customer's data model. But in this particular tenant, right, we have organizations, we have individuals, we have employees, we have contacts, right? So I just want to focus on contacts. So I'm just going to go ahead and limit a view on contacts. And we have queries to show you how to isolate that if that's something of interest, right? Now, other customers are asking if we want to be able to understand, okay, so now I have my focus entity type that I want to kind of analyze and query against, but I don't want to kind of worry about OV false or any kind of noise, right? I trust the Reltio data. This is telling me operational value is true, and I want to use this for analysis, right? I don't want to worry about the junk, right? And so this is essentially a query that we have a sort procedure that we've provided documentation for to essentially focus on only OV values. So if you look at this right here, right? I don't know if you saw before in the attributes. I'll go back just to show you, right? But there's a lot of OV true information, right? And then depending on how many events and how many sources are conflicting with an entity, right? There'll be a lot of different addresses, for example here. But here we're just seeing the single source of truth kind of address that we define in the Reltio platform, through customer rules as well, right? To understand that this is what I care about, and this is what I want to go ahead and analyze against, right? And it's the same for crosswalks as well. And so the last thing that a lot of customers also ask is, how do I essentially get rid of that JSON, right? And the attributes and crosswalks. I need to flatten that. That's super annoying. Definitely understand the pain point there, right? So, we're coming out with documentation, essentially how to do this, right? So this is essentially taking, certain attributes from this, contact view with the OV values, right? So I already know I want to focus on context. I already know I want to focus on the single source of truth. And now I just want to be able to see these attributes spread out, on column base, right? And flattened out so I can understand exactly, what I need to focus on from a lead score perspective from a variety of prospects, for example, right? And so this is all flattened out for analysis for this B2B kind of lead score use case right here. And And that's kind of what we want to kind of show is that, the data that we deliver is flexible. You can create custom views on that. And the most interesting thing is that once we create an entity, and we'll just do this in a second, everything slows down, right? And you'll see that that everything gets an update, even the custom views. Okay. Any questions so far, Chris, or can I keep on going?
Yeah, there's some questions, so you want to just answer those now, I guess. Okay, let's do it. Can we include audit logs part of the data loading to Snowflake? I think we asked that already.
Yeah, that's a future. That's a future.
Yeah. What are some specific business problems this can solve upon implementation?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And let me go through this demo here because this is the lead score demo. Let me set up this situation a little bit more. So I have created here an entity contact kind of list here, and I'm only curious about OV values, right? And I'm looking at attributes, and I have a variety of attributes here that I've listed, but this is for, essentially a sales or field team to be able to understand, okay, who do I need to target that is interested in my product, right? And based on kind of their interest, right, and what stage they're in, if it's an opportunity, if it's a qualified sales lead, if it's a technical evaluation, be able to get a pulse check into how they're doing, right? And there's a lead score associated to this, right? So when I create another entity, and let me get through this demo here, but we'll show you that, if there's a change in this score, right, and somebody's trying to target, a certain subset of a high scoring aspect of it, that data immediately gets updated for a sales team to be able to work off the latest list, right? And this is just one example here. I do have more examples that I go through actually in our academy training. And so recommend that we kind of check that out as well. And I'm sure I'll be on here more to maybe discuss more use cases in general, but hopefully this will be good for this demo here. So let me just go. Oh yeah, let me just go ahead and continue and let me show you what I'm talking about here. All right, so I have here. This is the tenant that's connected with the Snowflake Connector, right? And what I want to do here is I want to create a new profile, and I'm going to make it a contact because that's what I have that table for. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and say I want to target somebody, James Bond. And for anybody curious, James Bond, I'm a Pierce Brosnan fan. That's my Bond. So we're going to go ahead and make this kind of a lead source. What does this say? A referral. And this is the employee that's kind of tracking this one down, right? The department that this James Bond in, let's call it operations. And the score right now, let's just call it like an 80. Put in some just random attributes here. So senior director. Now, stage. So let's see. It's need status active. Then let's just call this for now. Okay, and so I'm creating this entity right now. So I'm looking this up. Okay, I think we should be good here. I'm going to save it. I'm going to have this new entity created, right? So I have this entity ID. I'm going to take this entity ID. I'm going to move away from the Reltio screen here. And I'm going to put this into the data table. So I want to show you just how quickly this is going to get updated. And so when I go ahead and run this query, this is the data table, this is a landing table that first projects, an entity update, right? So I just created a new entity. And we want to see, after I run this, if it's going to show up. So let's see what we got here. Look at that. So this is the entity that was just created. And let's just look at this JSON here. So yeah, see operations value. This is James, right? This is the exact thing I just created, James Bond, right? And so that's great. And that was super fast, right? So I want to go ahead and continue to show how it flows down here. So you just give me, I'm just changing all this stuff. Really just understand this. Okay. So entities, this is the table that we provide. We provide a script that you run it off this table. Let's see if it shows up there. It does. So that it's the same schema, right? Attributes, crosswalks that are now broken up. And this is the same kind of information that we just tracked in there. Let's do it for this custom view, right? Which is also kind of important. We want to show that, like, even if you're creating custom views on something that Reltio provides, it's still showing up, right? This is something that Reltio documents, right, on how to do something, but doesn't necessarily provide out of the box, right? This is something that you would create on your own. And this is filtered by contact, right? And then let's continue to go on the OV selection. Okay, so now we have no more OV true, right, information. This is the single source of truth just for this, demo here. This is an entity created, right? So in real life, there'll be multiple versions of this, right? But it would be the latest, right, that would be represented here. And we'll do an entity change to kind of show you what I'm talking about. But this is essentially what this does for you here. And then last but not least, we have this, flattened attribute demo here, and it kind of shows up. So you see James Bond, 34, male, senior director operations, this is a referral, Sam Smith, technical evaluation, all these things that kind of show up. And so when you think about, again, providing a lead score, a list of lead score for a sales or field team to kind of focus on, right? You now have this being showcased here. Let me see if this is so it's yeah, I mean this is, let me see 1 second. There we go, sorry. Yeah, he was 80, so that was a greater than 80 thing. But if it's greater than 79, 80 or above, we see James Bond here. And all the associated lead scores of these candidates. So you're shortlisting these candidates, and then this person that was just a new entity that was created in the system is now part of that list, right? So you see the value of near real time is that the salesperson is now enabled with another person to kind of contact. And so another thing I want to kind of showcase here is that the time travel feature that that works with the Reltio data that we provide. So if I look in the past minute of activity with this entity here, you'll see that it was created, right? This existed a minute ago because I just created it. If I go back 10 minutes, right, you're going to see that it's not there because there was no entity, right? So when you think about managing different versions or updates of an entity, right, being able to kind of track that lineage of that history, this is a pretty neat feature, time travel feature that you can utilize with the Reltio data that is piped in through the Snowflake connector to be able to understand different changes of an entity and the event that's associated with that. So now what I'm going to do next is just quickly change the score. So I'm going to edit this here. I'm going to make it 93. And what caused the 93? Maybe it went to the quote was sent, the technical evaluation was great, and then maybe now they want an add-on service or something, and it's 200,000. That's what drives the lead score, just for simplification purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and save this, update, and then I'm going to go ahead and see what happens again. So I'll do it for this one. And it is it's the same. Sorry, it's the same ID. All right, so we're going to see again how quickly this kind of shows up. Actually, I'll start with the data table because I want to show you the version stuff. So All right, I'm going to go ahead and enter this query, and then we're going to hopefully see two different versions of the event. There's an entity that was just created, and then I just made some updates to it. So let's see if it shows up here. And it did. So we see two versions, right? That's occurring here. We have, in this version, we just changed a bunch of things. Let's see, like value score. So the lead score is 93, right? This is 80. So you can see that there's different versions of these events that are categorized as this landing table. The most important thing that is important here is that we want to show the latest version, right? So this is the most recent entity update, and we see again that this is going to be the change in the lead score of 93, right? And then when you think about showing this again on the latest list, it's going to be flexible to show up on this one too.
A small question here. Hello. The
Yes.
time travel, are you using the Snowflake standard feature, or you bringing in the data into the tables so that, because Snowflake only has maximum time travel of 90 days backwards, right? That's my understanding.
Yes, that's right. This is the Snowflake feature, and it's 90 days for time travel.
And just a small follow-up question. When we these API calls which are happening for the Snowflake connector from Reltio, we have a limit of like 1 million queries, right? 1 million calls in a day. The Snowflake that does that count to the daily quota, or that is not included in the quota?
For the Snowflake, for your Snowflake specific quota?
No. So if you go in your initial security diagram in which you have a Reltio publishing to an S3 SQSQ and a S3 bucket, right? In your VPC on the left side, right? So
Yep.
these are calls happening, right? These are API calls happening, and we have typically on the base Reltio 1 million calls. So are those calls going towards the quota? Because if I do like a mass upload, I'll basically suck up my entire quota for the day, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I don't think so, but let me go ahead and confirm on that because I understand that concern, and I don't think it should be counted, but let me go ahead and confirm that for you.
No, outbounds are not generally considered API calls.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Gino. Okay. One last thing, if we have some time, I can go over an API, but I'm not sure if we want to just maybe pause it, Chris, if we want to answer questions, or I can just quickly demo an event monitoring API real quick.
Yeah, we have several questions, and maybe I can push those out to the Reltio community and just have you go answer those directly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I can do that. Whatever works.
Okay. I'll push out the questions to community.reltio.com, and then he'll answer those specific ones, and I'll hopefully do that by Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, that works. So let me go ahead and quickly look at this entity monitoring feature that we have here. So like I want to go with this data table, and I'm going to copy a timestamp. Should be on this one. Done. Copy this timestamp here.
By the way, when you were talking about time travel, I thought you were joking at first, and then it's like, I guess I've heard that correctly. So,
It's a real thing.
yeah.
That's what Reltio is releasing, time travel.
Yeah.
We're not releasing that, just be clear. All right. So yeah, I have this. I have a get status here, and what I'm going to do is, this is best practices before you start doing a validation after like a major sync, that you see and you run this to see if there's no events that are occurring. Yeah, refresh my target. Second. All right, I can start taking some questions as I refresh this token. If that works, Chris.
Yeah. So why S3 is needed in the middle instead of directly reading from AWS SQS?
It's essentially a security measure so that customers, if they wanted to encrypt the data at rest, they can. And so by putting it into a storage bucket and then also connecting to Snowpipe, that's one of the requirements to do that. And so that's essentially why we designed it that way.
Great. And Brad asks, for the entity JSONs, do they contain just their survived values, or are OV values included in the attributes?
JSONs, they're both the values are included. The query I was showing is just to isolate OV, but in the raw JSON, both of them would be included.
Yeah, and I think this was answered by Gino, but just to make sure, is there a mechanism on the Reltio side to delete data from these shared Snowflake tables for GDPR purposes, if required?
Sorry, the question was tracking.
Is there a mechanism?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so John, the question is there something that will, if you do a GDPR delete, will it automatically delete the data out of Snowflake? And I think the analogy is it's the same as you would have to delete data from SAP or Salesforce or whatever. Reltio does not actively go out and delete data in other applications in a GDPR delete. You need a workflow there to manage that. I mean, like Reltio is going to have all the crosswalks for you, but we don't actively delete that data from other places.
That's correct.
great. Thank you, Gino. Can you link the OV true stored, is it procurement documentation or PROC documentation?
Are we true to POC? So PCR, what was that documentation?
Sorry, can you link to the OV true stored PROC documentation?
PROC documentation. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
All right.
Yeah.
And there's several more questions. I don't know. We only have like 1 minute. So how about one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Is these tables created during the data ingestion, or do we need to pre-create these tables using DDL provided by Reltio before we start the data ingestion?
Before we start the data ingestion, sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah. These tables, are they created during the data ingestion, or do we need to pre-create these tables using DDL provided by Reltio before we start the data ingestion?
Yeah, they need to be created before the actual data ingestion. So there's documentation that kind of goes by step in the configuration. We recommend some validation to be done, just re-indexing a simple entity to make sure that everything is going forward with the configuration. And then after you create these table structures, then you do an initial data load. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and great. So John, unfortunately, we're out of time, but
Yeah.
I am going to post all these questions to the community in the next few days, and hopefully we get those. Or John, I'll have you help answer those, or if there's others that can help answer those as well. But this is really good. Hopefully you guys like this. Please take the survey at the end, the pop-up. Really appreciate you guys coming, and until next week, and when we do the Google BigQuery one. So that one I'm really excited about, John. So he's gonna be back.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.